You guys thought you scared me off of talking about Doom the Dark Ages forever, huh? Well, I've been on the internet a long-ass time, and I don't scare that easily. But I promise I'm going to try to be a little bit more positive this video, because now we've gotten a little bit more information on the game, thanks to the Xbox Developers Direct. I've had a bit of time to sit on my initial gut reactions to some of this news, so I hope I can make a bit more of a cohesive argument with this video when I say that I'm not totally in love with the game, but I also want to say that I don't have nearly as strong, harsh feelings about it as I did when I made my initial video. And for those who complained that I was hasty about my initial assumptions, you're probably right. But none of us were truly going to know until we got more information, and one of my prevailing marketing theories is that the information that you give someone about your game is the information that people can and will make assumptions off of. I was working with what I had. And I'll admit, some of my theories in that initial video were based off of information about previous Doom games that I didn't have correct. So, for that, I apologize. As a quick side note about the rest of the Developers Direct showcase, I was super impressed by South of Midnight. It looks great, and the story and mechanics all sound quite unique and fantastic. I'm really sad this is only the first time I've heard about it because it's a game that's right up my alley. But, back to Doom. We're going to break down the Doom showcase in order of the things that are talked about, and some of the details that I love, and some of the ones I'm still not convinced about. Let's get into it. So, when we left off with the original trailer and reveal, we knew a few key pieces of information. There was going to be a more medieval-ish theme, there's going to be mechs, dragons, and a chainsaw shield, plus some melee options and a skull-crushing gun. The level design is meant to be a bit flatter, and this is meant to be a prequel to Doom 2016. So, what do we find out this time? The showcase starts off with some cool cinematics, and we're treated immediately to a very cool-looking flail. We've also got some other people shooting, big demons being Sparta-kicked into a hole, and a chainsaw shield beheading. We get the confirmation from Hugo that we're going to be a super weapon waged in a medieval war against hell, which is about the same information as we got last time, so makes sense. This does communicate that the story has potential to get big and weird, but we know Doomguy's very origins were also based in war. So, the story will be different, but maybe not as weird as I'm anticipating. We'll see. There's always potential for retconning, but I'll be honest, it's id's franchise and they can do whatever the hell they want. I do think that, as I mentioned in my Doom is a horror game video, that it is going to continue to move away from the horror aspects of Doom and just make it a straight-up power fantasy. And this emphasis on how powerful Doomguy is does confirm that. This is not a bad thing. Power fantasies are fun, but it will be different, and I'm not sure if I'll like it. But they built this game for millions of people, and not just a girl who lives in New Zealand, you know? The showcase then moves on to the combat, and immediately I gotta point out a few things here. Number one, these environments make me want Quake real bad, and like the first Quake, the Eldritch Quake. 2, this shotgun is cool. And 3, this HUD is weird. I get the soulsification of the video game world, which is not inherently a bad thing to be clear, but we can do that without this Times New Roman font that seems to exist in every Souls-like now. In theory as well, I love the Doomguy mugshot, very much a nod to classic Doom, but it doesn't look complete. There may be a story reason as to why it doesn't look like Doomguy at all. Maybe it's just a standardized HUD that exists in every suit like the one Doomguy wears. But it's just a wee bit uncanny. All the rest of the HUD elements, though, are actually pretty nice. It's stripped back, but I do like that. It feels fairly elegant in its simplicity, which will likely be a running theme throughout the rest of the game. The combat itself that is showcased with this Mancubus is absolutely the epitome of what the classic Dooms were all about. And now it makes a little more sense as to why the environments were going to be made to be a bit flatter. You're not going to be just flying over the arenas anymore, you're going to be on the ground, in the thick of the action, standing and fighting. Side note, a lot of people got really mad about the stand and fight thing, and like, I don't know, you're not literally standing still, but it does sound like the gameplay is just going to be a tad less breakneck, you know? I do think this does mean that enemies may be a little bit more tanky, as they show a player taking a bit more time to dismember them and do glory kills. I'm not totally sure how I feel about this yet, but it's something that will just need to be seen within the larger context of the game, because maybe there are sections that are more like your chain gun down a bunch of zombie men type of classic Doom power trip. Too many tanky enemies that you have to stand and dismember may end up dragging down the speed of the game even further than its already fairly slow speed in comparison to the other new Doom games. I am furiously curious about how they've balanced the chainsaw shield, considering it's a defensive tool as well as a weapon. But I guess we did have modifiers for the chain gun in previous Doom iterations that also acted as a shield, so it's actually not too new a concept for the Doom franchise. Although I do think it's kind of funny we now have a Captain America-style attack in Doom now. I do love that there's multiple melee options that have varying degrees of ranges as well. That sounds like an oxymoron, but we've got the fist, which works at the closest range, then the mace, the flail, and the shield, which you can throw over longer distances. If anything were to signify the prevailing cry of rip and tear to me, the melee system is it. And we got guns, of course! This Skull Crusher gun will forever and always be one of my favorite weapon designs. There's zero dispute about it. The double plasma gun just looks fucking ridiculous, in a good way. The shotguns look great, but gotta say, this nail gun sequence just, again, kinda makes me want some Quake. There's an extended gameplay sequence, and I do want to come back to movement really quickly. There's a lot of, heft to the Doomslayer's presence here, and I've been going back and forth as to how I feel about it. On one hand, it's always been kind of a meme that in the classic Doom games, the Doom guy is basically just ice skating all over the place fairly quickly, but on the other hand, it's also what made classic Doom work. It doesn't seem that Doomslayer is particularly that much slower, but the navigation across that gap looked a bit awkward, kind of like a teleport to the other side, but not really, and I'm wondering why he couldn't have just been sped up a little to clear gaps like that. The environments are also physically much bigger than in classic Doom, so I am curious to know how the game will actually feel when you're moving in it. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's hardly fair to try to tell from a video how a game actually feels to move in, so I don't want to be unduly harsh. Now, here comes my absolute favorite feature, the adjustable difficulty system. There's a thing that my partner is forever shouting from the rooftops when it comes to game design: player agency. And not only that, but this being part of the difficulty system, it also creates options for both accessibility and harder gameplay. The granularity of this means you can also figure out what your particular pain points are as a player and adjust the game to account for that. I know it's not practical or even useful for every game to have difficulty settings this granular, but I do think it's a fantastic way to allow for all types of gameplay styles to have a chance to get their fill. And I can only imagine how much QA, combat balancing, and programming took to get this right. So kudos in advance for the entire team for making this work, and also a big kudos to just whoever came up with the system to start. They also cover the mechs, which is really not much more than what we got from the trailer. I do remember now that these mechs are a thing you see in Doom Eternal buried in the dirt, so it's cool you now actually get to play in them. There's a few more details about the dragon, mostly that you can do combat with them, and I can't lie, it does look pretty cool. Hopefully it handles better than the Skyrim system of dragon combat. With all the cool combat out of the way, Hugo moves on to talk about the world of the Doom universe, which does fully embrace the hell tech, but this castle just looks like it's straight out of Quake. Sorry, I can't help it. I see Quake 1's influence all over this environment design, which is great, but it makes me want a damn Quake game! We're then shown a mission in which there's a huge crowd of people that are stranded beneath an energy shield, and Doomguy must save them. This part of it actually feels quite Mass Effect-y, which is not a bad thing at all, just an interesting design choice to put in a Doom game. There's also a lot of enemies shown at once as the camera pans through the areas, which will definitely be a switch up from the more arena-based combat that had waves of enemies teleported in, rather than facing off with you to start. This giant demon? Well, close enough. Welcome back, Dark Souls. This is what I more or less meant earlier with the soulsification of the game industry. This idea of really big demon boss that you gotta fight as a little dude has become quite ubiquitous over the years, but maybe that's not really fair to Doom. They kind of invented that. It's most prominent in Doom 3's ending fight with the Cyber Demon. My assumption is that this demon would not be the final one that you fight. I doubt they'd just spoil the end in a showcase, so I'm curious to know when you'll encounter it, and it looks pretty cool. Apparently a music team called Finishing Move will be doing the OST, so we finally have an answer about that. I guess I can't blame id for going this direction after what happened with Mick Gordon, and the music is appropriately Doom. Doom's music has always been good, but hot take, I find the tracks blend together a lot. Like, I couldn't really pick out one from the other. And that's really no one's fault. Doom is a game that's pretty much all action all the time, so you're not going to be seeing the same kind of emotional highs and lows indicated in track lists that you would for games that are more emotionally dense. But who knows? This is a wildly different Doom game than what we're used to getting, so maybe there will be a bit more variation in emotional intensities and therefore the tracks. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, we've got some info about cutscenes and stories, and oh hey there, Lilith from Diablo. So we've got Doom Guy imprisoned as a tool of the makers at the start of this, and I'm curious about this. Are they going to attempt to tie in stories from previous Doom games to explain this? Pure speculation here, but maybe the makers captured him from his position fighting demons in hell, as he was at the end of Doom 64. No idea, pure speculation on my part, but I'm very curious to know how they'll explain this. One thing I really appreciate is that they're actually going to do more than pay lip service to the story, actually putting it in front of us in cutscenes rather than just shoving everything into the codex. As I explained in my previous video, because the lore was just shoved into a codex for the most part, every cutscene just felt out of context without that, and I didn't feel like I had a reason to care about any of the story. I, of course, could have gone back through the codex and actually read the stuff, so admittedly, skill issue. But it also just didn't feel engaging to get almost all of the information in text dumps, and because you're not really making any decisions in Doom, it's not exactly like that text is really relevant to how the game plays or feels. I actually don't mind text dumps in a lot of scenarios. I play a lot of RPGs, so engaging with lore and flavor text is something I usually do a lot of, because the game also has a lot of decisions that hinge on that information. But these games also often have cutscenes that give relevant surrounding context, as well as the context of the actual decision you'll be making, so you're given a reason to care about it. Doom 2016 also did a wonderful job of balancing cutscenes and codex information, both through cutscenes that were entirely cinematic, and just the holographic cutscenes that could play while you were moving throughout the game. I think it's great that id is trying to course correct on this, and the quality of the scenes shown look really good. Will the story be amazing? No idea. It sounds big and epic, but I'm not totally sure I need that for Doom. But that's just my 2 cents, and obviously, again, it didn't make this just to please me. And another hot take, I'm glad they're not going to try to create a multiplayer mode for this. Eternals failed miserably, and while I get that people are disappointed in not having a new multiplayer mode, I would just honestly rather have id focus on creating a really good single-player game, rather than trying to do both and not doing well. Eternal is absolutely not a bad game, but I can't help but feel that more effort and care could have been put into making that story feel really impactful if multiplayer hadn't been on the cards. Purely speculation on my part, of course, but sometimes it's just easier to cut those losses and make a really good, really tight game. Overall, I'm feeling more positive about the game than I was when we got our first look at it. I'm not going to pre-order or buy the game day one. It's not an, oh my god, I want this game in my system now kind of game. I'm actually not totally sure I'll be out of the Path of Exile mines by then. That game has me hooked in a way that I just was not expecting. But in any case, I'm sure I'll eventually play the Fur-Caped Crusader when the game goes on sale. It's done a lot of great work on each new Doom game, and I do appreciate the effort put in by the team to not just rest on their laurels of the game just being the next one in one of the most beloved franchises in the world. I haven't always agreed with their decision making, but I can't ever call them lazy. I appreciate the hard work of this team. Every facet of the new Doom games that I have loved is thanks to all the devs who have given it their all to make them happen. So, thanks y'all, and good luck on launch day. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more in the future from me, maybe a Dark Ages playthrough eventually. Let me know what you're looking forward to the most from this game. And, as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!